spectacular double at Oran Park, Volvo's Jim Richards believed he had a good thing going when the teams arrived at Adelaide's Mallala Raceway for race 5 of the VOC Championship Series. Problem was, he made his worst start of the year and then had to play catch-up as Paul Morris disappeared in the distance after streaking them off the line in the Vasari 320 Bimmer. Gentleman Jim reeled in the Queenslander, but passing opportunities were limited. A miscue by the Volvo driver on the final lap took the pressure off Morris and closed the points gap as the drivers prepare for another bout of 2-litre title fever in the South today. Hello there, I'm Mike Raven. Welcome to Mallala Motorsport Park and race 6 of the VOC Gases Super Touring Championship of Australia. Well, we've had a mixed bag with weather for race 5 and again for race number 6. And joining me is former 4-time Australian champion and 4-time Bathurst winner, the dapper Alan Moffat.
Very dapper.
Dapper.
Thank you.
You like this too? It's my V8 litigation suit.
I do like your tie.
Tell me this, Alan. We've seen Paul Morris on a wet track win race number 5. Jimmy Richards played catch-up, went off in the last lap. I would think the extra distance of today's race would probably fall into Jimmy's hands.
I think it could, and he'll be wanting to get a better start. If he does that, Paul could be in trouble by about the 3/4 mark in the race.
Tyres?
Tires, well, they have to maintain the same set, so naturally it's hard on them, and a driver that knows how to nurse it in the first part of the day will certainly come through later. There's no question of that.
I thought Matthew Coleman, that we spoke about on the last show, is the big improver, and I think also he perhaps bears watching here today.
What a lot of people misunderstand with young drivers is that when they start going off and making excuses, whereas Coleman is staying on the track and all of a sudden he's on the podium.
Time to check out the points table for the VOC Gases Super Series, and Jimmy Richards in the Volvo S40 sits on top of the table. 67 points to Paul Morris on 53. Then Patrick Watts missing today but back for Winton, and also Brad Jones on 40 points apiece, and Matthew Coleman rounding out the top 5 with 37. We spoke of young Matthew Coleman, who was sidekick to Brad Jones in the Audi team for 1999. He's an outstanding young driver. We believe that the best is yet to come from this young man, and Charles Stewart is with him at the moment.
Well, thanks, Mike. In that first race, a very special moment for a young driver here. His very first podium finish. I imagine, Matt Coleman, that must have been very special for you.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, certainly very excited about the whole thing, and to get a podium result in my third race, I'm very happy.
Now, also in your third race, I guess the emotions and the feelings you have about suddenly achieving these sort of dreams must be quite something too.
Oh, absolutely. You know, Brad Jones and Jim Richards and all those guys, I've watched them as children, and they've always been celebrities somewhat. To be out there and driving against them as a competitor, it's a real buzz.
Now, in the second race, you'll be in 5th on the grid, I think. You'll have a bit of work cut out for you, won't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Starting 5th won't be so easy, unfortunately. We had a few dramas in the second qualifying session with breakdown in radio communication, so that caused us a bit of grief. So we should be right. I'm confident after getting a good start in the first one, we should be able to get up there in the second one.
And the boss is back in 10th place, so there'll be a bit more pressure on you, won't there?
Yeah, absolutely. Somebody's got to wave the Audi flag.
Well, good luck.
Thank you.
Thanks, mate.
Coming up after the break, we take a look at the benefits of cost-effective control tyres and how Yokohama has tightened up the Super Touring Championship chase.
The rubber between track and driver has a huge impact on motorsport. Teams may make many adjustments on a car, improving times by fractions of a second, but the right tyre can make several seconds difference every lap. And now this season, the question of tyre choice is no longer a factor. There's one for all: Yokohama.
On the competition, it should result in a more even set of times. It'll probably result in slightly slower times because control tyres, no matter where they are a compromise. You're looking for a tyre that's going to try and do all things in all conditions, which we all know is not possible. So it'll produce slightly slower times. And the teams, because most of them haven't run on Yokohama before, or at least in the last few years, they've got a lot of learning to do with the way in which they set their cars up to suit the tyres that we've presented to them.
The control tyre was produced by Yokohama especially for the Australian series. At every meeting, teams are allowed just 6 tyres to use during racing and qualifying. How they use them is up to them. And for drivers and team owners like Paul Morris, it's been a learning process.
The more we run, the more we get to know the tyre and the more we can get out of it. And I'm sure the other teams are doing the same. It's really just a matter of how switched on you are and how you can make the most of it.
The Yokohama truck is a regular feature of all the touring car rounds. Inside it carries all the tyres needed for every meeting. That's around 250 slicks and around 200 wets. And if it does rain, inside the Yokohama garage, they get very busy indeed.
We could be changing anywhere up to about 200 rims on and off, wet, back to slick, back to wet, if the case may be.
Big teams like Volvo or Audi have in the past had an advantage with tyres. They often had factory support for testing, as well as access to the latest compounds. And even though the new control tyres bring them back to the field, most see the changes as a good thing.
Well, I think the first thing, obviously, it makes it cheaper for all the teams because with a control tyre, you don't need to test a lot of different compounds. You've got one tyre, and that's what you've got to use. So you do away with the necessity to actually test a lot of tyres before each race.
For the smaller teams, control tyres mean greater parity, a chance to compete more equally with the big boys, something teams like Knight Racing with their Mondeos are benefiting from already.
Last season, more or less, it was probably a 3.5 second gap between the haves and the have-nots, and being the factory teams. And now that everybody's on the same tyre, well, they probably come back to us about 1.5 seconds, and we probably picked up a second, so it's made the racing a lot closer.
I was probably a little bit sceptical when they first said, listen, we're going to have a control tyre. But after using them at Lakeside, at Oran Park, and at Mallala here, they've been fantastic. We haven't had an ounce of trouble with them. They've given good grip, and the racing's been good and close, and that's what everyone's tried to get.
Change is rarely universally applauded, but in the case of Yokohama control tyres, most are enthusiastic, especially when the racing is closer and the budgets are smaller.
Well, obviously we save a few bucks because we don't use as many tyres, and we can put the money into somewhere else. We can do more testing or try and develop something for the car. So we'll still spend every cent we've got, but I can imagine some of the teams that are really struggling, the privateer guys, they're just loving this control tyre.
The car Morris drives is the one campaigned by his former BMW Motorsport teammate, Jeff Brabham. Even though it's a 2-year-old machine, it's a very competitive package. Morris admits it's practically a factory-backed car, and acknowledging he had an advantage over the other independents, he withdrew from the independents competition before the first race.
I know we're not a factory-backed team, but I believe our team has a bit of a technology advantage over all the other independents. So that's basically it. Our main focus is the Drivers' Championship, and we'll just concentrate on that.
It's virtually the same spec. It's the sister car, the car that Jeff Brabham, my teammate, drove. So we sort of know a fair bit about it.
Driving this year with the Yokohama controlled tyres, many other teams have muttered that with his rear-wheel drive, Morris will be at an advantage. His tyre wear will be more even between front and rear. It's something that he dismisses.
Well, you know, if I was in a front-wheel drive car, they'd probably say the same thing. You know, if any of those guys want to swap cars, they can come and swap any time. I'd love to be driving one of those new front-wheel drive cars.
Whatever the advantage or disadvantage, the dual championship winner has already shown he's going to be a force to be reckoned with in 1999. After 5 races, he's just behind Jim Richards in the Drivers' Championship with 2 firsts, a second and a third. And his focus for this year is clear.
You know, I hope to win the championship. That's what they're here for. We know we haven't got the fastest car out there, but hopefully we're going to have the most consistent one.
Coming up on the other side of the break, it's time to start those engines for race 6 of the VOC Gases Super Series at Mallala Raceway. here at Mallala Raceway. The sun is trying to sneak through. We're preparing for race number 6 of the VOC Gases Super Touring Car Series. John Henderson there, Paul Morris. He's ready to run, starting out of pole position. A good-looking field. Jimmy Richards is there, and so too is Charles Stewart, who's ready to have a chat with Peter Hills.
Well, Peter, a great result in the first race, and now 4th here on the grid. Things are looking pretty good today.
Well, yeah, so far we just sort of tried to play a bit of an intelligent game in the first race and finish for the points, bit of consistency. And here, I mean, it's just absolutely critical that we get a good start here and you know, try and just consolidate our position.
Well, the driver's about ready to move off on their warm-up lap. Front row of the grid chair between Paul Morris and Jimmy Richards. It's going to be another one of those head-to-head encounters. Here's how the field lines up, with Paul Morris on pole with a 1:16.77, and right alongside is Jimmy Richards in the Volvo. Row number 2 made up of Mark Adderton, and then Peter Hills, a great qualifying effort. Row number 3 is Matt Coleman and Tony Newman in the Peugeot. Row number 4 brings together John Henderson and young Dean Canto. Row number 5 has brought together Anthony Robson and Bradley Jones, a long way back out of 10. On the next line, it's Aaron McGill, and sharing with him is Jim Cornish. The next line brings together David Auger and Milton Leslite. And starting in the last row, all by himself, is Troy Searle. Don't go away, this will be a great race. Well, very cool here at Mallala Raceway, but the wet weather of the previous race has gone completely. Green flag, the grid is now set. Paul Morris ready to run, and he's got Jim Richards, who'll be out for a very quick start. There's Morris as we take the side-on shot. Just as he's got it on full rev, and he's off the line. Jim Richards, I thought, may have won the start, and Morris moves to the right-hand side of the racetrack very, very quickly. Also, Mark Adderton off to a very good start, and Peter Hills up on the inside of him.
Another beautiful start by Paul Morris, absolutely on the rev limiter. The flames coming out the back of the pipe. He got a brilliant start. Jim Richards showing that he can make up time in the dry, and Brad Jones trying to make time down pit straight as well on the opening lap. But here's Paul Morris into the horseshoe for the first lap. Jim Richards very close this time.
Well, this is race 6 of the VOC Super Series. One going very wide that time was Jim Cornish. So Jim gets back in line, and Brad Jones having to do this almost from the back of the field after a very poor finishing effort in race number 5. Speed Trap shows the cars running 219 kilometres an hour as they head into the right-hander.
Nothing shabby about that, but here we go through the hairpin at the end of the back straight. Everybody pretty tidy on the opening lap. Let's see what happens down through the S's. What kind of a lead? Morris already taking the inside line. Jim Richards, obviously, after the drubbing he got in the rain, is taking no chances. He wants to let Paul Morris know he means business from the very first lap on this occasion.
Well, he had to sit round in the wet in the previous race. Here are the positions. Morris, the leader from Richards, Hills, Henderson, Adderton, and young Matt Coleman runs in 6th spot as Jim Richards moves right up on the tail of the Vasari BMW 320 and was trying to edge across to the right-hand side. Henderson goes through. Then it's Mark Adderton, Brad Jones all the way from the back. Then 44 going through Dean Canto. So we have a very competitive front half of the field, and the real race here is between 1st and 2nd. Paul Morris.
Jim Richards already cutting the curve there. You saw his right front riding the curb. He's trying to get every millimeter of the road he can to try and get on Paul Morris's back bumper bar. Not quite there yet, but certainly much closer than he was earlier in the rain.
And we saw Peter Hills in 4th position as they come down to the right-hander. John Henderson just in front of him.
Tight racing.
Yes, it is tight racing. The interesting thing, if you were with us last week and you caught race number 5 in the wet, they are running 5 seconds quicker than they were last week. As we go on board, John Henderson in 3rd place.
Henderson improving every race. I thought his first outing at Lakeside was a little bit shabby, but he's certainly come on gangbusters here at Mallala, and I think doing an excellent job.
Look at this. Up front, it's on in earnest. Jimmy Richards, 2nd place, sitting right underneath the BMW 320, up on the inside and fakes it across if he can to the right hand, but already Paul Morris is over there. If you're going to pass him, you have to do it inside the white line on the grass.
And here we go down past the pits. Right-hander, you can see Jim fading left. He's going to come through on the inside and hope that Paul's going wide, but Morris got his BMW under full control, driving it beautifully, and Jim Richards is going to have to work extremely hard to get by the young Queenslander.
From what you've seen so far, where's the passing opportunity, you believe?
Well, he wants to try and be on the inside in this position, but as long as Paul Morris keeps it handy and places himself track position-wise, he's really not going to be able to do it. So Jim will just be hoping to get a better run onto the back straight.
Car number 4 and car number 2 at it, Mark Adderton. And also on the outside him was Matthew Coleman, and then Brad Jones starting to come into the picture after starting at the back of the field. Now it's Coleman down on the inside here of Mark Adderton. Didn't have a really brilliant race in the rain. He looks good here in the driver.
And here's Brad Jones still trying to, he'd like to get back right close to his teammate.
To the right-hand side of the racetrack here. Jim goes tap, tap. Come on. Give me a break.
Slight optical illusion there, Mike. I don't think he did hit him. I say Jim doesn't operate that way. Of all the gentleman drivers I ever had the opportunity to drive against, it was always a delight to drive against Jimmy Richards. You knew that he'd be tough, but always fair. And he's giving Paul Morris every chance he can. But again here, Morris is doing what he has to do. He's placing the car on the right-hand side of the circuit so that when they go down into this bottom corner, Jim can't come through on him.
Well, I reckon if Jim wants to lead it, he'll need a front-end loader. Positions at this moment, Morris over Richards, that's obvious. Henderson runs back in 3rd. Adderton is up to 7th. Canto 8th. Newman is next, followed by McGill, Robson and David Auger in the top 12. And here's where the traffic congestion is. Anthony Robson, who's done a terrific job in the Honda, as Richards comes down one more time. Just down on the outside, and he's just trying more. Jim doesn't touch anyone.
Well, that one is more a case of Paul repositioning himself, but a very smart move on Jim Richards' part there. He wanted to get up and rub door handles with him. That's fair enough. All's fair in love and war, but he has to be up alongside him to be able to capitalize on that move. So very good strategic driving on the part, I should say tactical driving on the part of Paul Morris. He's doing a superb job of keeping his BMW in front here at the moment.
They sweep down the pit straight. Let's have a look at the replay from Brad Jones, who started 10th in the field today, and how he got off the line.
Pretty good start, but he's got a lot of cars in front of him, Mike. He'll drop in here on the right-hand side. He's wise, yes. Still didn't like the speed of the car in front of him, so he went left. And now he's got to put up with that fellow anyway. Now he's going right. So a very busy opening lap for Brad Jones.
Well, the problem as he came out of there was they didn't get off to a great start. John Henderson, the replay here, he qualified 7th. Down the outside, a little bit of the grassy turf and surf, and he's across here, sitting in behind Adderton as they make it into the first right-hander, then back to the left-hander.
Yes, he had his car nicely placed there. He moved quickly on off the start-finish straight, and now he's nicely placed here to capitalize on a respectable start.
Now from Mark Adderton, he got away to a pretty good start. He was 3rd on the line, but you can see Jimmy Richards and Paul Morris disappear into the distance. By the time he gets into it,
the smoke's still coming through the cabin off the front tires on the wheel spin off the line, so you can't say these fellows aren't trying to get the car off the line.
As Peter Hill's Mondeos get off the line pretty smart. Here we are back as Paul Morris leads through this right-hand kink down to the right-hander. A little straight here, and then it's straight back to the right-hand side.
A delicate part there. He's got to try and maintain speed through, and he likes to drift a little bit to the left, but he knows he's got that Volvo so close to him that Paul's actually keeping it tight through the kink and allowing Jimmy actually to get closer than he otherwise would if Paul wasn't running such a defensive race.
Well, Jim's worst nightmare is he keeps making all these moves down the outside and cuts back. As you can see, then tries to get up the inside here. Gets halfway, then swings back. But he can't do anything about it. And what's happened is just behind him, all the traffic is closed up. So that buffer that 1st and 2nd held over John Henderson has now dissipated completely.
Morris using all the road when he can and the curves, doing really a very, very good job. This is hard work. When you got a fellow with the experience that Jim Richards has hounding you like this is tough stuff, and he's doing it extremely well.
We're on board there with Matthew Coleman as they work the pit straight down to the right-hander.
Through the horseshoe, here he is. He's got a little bit of traffic in front of him here. He wants to get by Henderson. He hasn't quite got the speed through the corner to do that. So Henderson's still holding him well down the back straight. But Morris leading Richards, and Henderson now ahead of Coleman.
Yeah, Coleman doing a good job. Now comes up under brakes. Moment of truth for John Henderson. Dives in and under.
reputation for driving like that. Very nicely done by Coleman, and nicely recovered by Henderson as well.
He certainly did.
So on board here through the S's still. Hasn't quite got the snap to stay with Coleman, so I think it's goodbye time to third place for John Henderson. But Matt Coleman impressing here again in race 6 of the BOC Gases Championship.
So Brad Jones, who started back in 10th spot, still trying to clear some of this traffic. He sits back there a couple of spots behind them, but now makes his run up as he comes up on the tail of Henderson. So his best lap, number 7 with a 1:12.69. So they're running, as I said, a little earlier, and this is about 5 seconds quicker than they were in the wet last.
Came through there nicely. He gained a little space by coming through the center of the corner, as you should do, but still not really able to capitalize in the slipstream. The Vectra still holding him, although here comes Brad down under the brakes. He saw his teammate do that, so he said, well, my brakes are just as good as yours. So Henderson, one lap after another, is being passed by the Audi team.
They make the exit to that corner and then the short straightaway down to the next right-hander. We're on board with Peter Hills in the Ford Mondeo in the night racing entry 88. And he has closed up right behind John Henderson.
Boy, that was a mistake if you ever saw one. I don't know what happened under in the cockpit to that one, but to knock a fellow out like that, I think there'll be words after this race, Mike.
Yeah, I don't know whether Henderson's slowed. We'll have a look at this again. Just have a listen to this as he dives into the corner.
Seems to be okay. But no, he just could have been a little bit on the slow side, but it's not up to the car passing you. We've seen the two cars in front, lap after lap, haven't touched each other. And the moment these two got in traffic, it was bingo time. That's a hard way to get knocked out when John Henderson was doing a good job in his Vectra.
He certainly was. Here's it again.
That's not cricket, and definitely Hills was going to get a little talking to after the race there. I'd be surprised that Clark, of course, didn't want to see him as well.
Another Hills hoist.
Here we go, down the back straight again, still. Morris fading to the right to protect the corner. Jim Richards will be watching this. He'll be looking just for a little bit of an opportunity where maybe under brake. Ooh, how close is this? I got to tell you, Jim Richards could drive anywhere in the world. The way he controls the car and can swap from side to side and take here he is on the left-hand side. He may not have enough room. No, Paul Morris still there. But now here's a chance on the inside. Nope, still not enough room.
And the order is Morris, Richards, Coleman, Jones, Hills, and Adderton. Back in a sec. Raceway, it's race 6 of the BOC Gases Super Touring Championship of Australia. Running there in 7th spot, Dean Canto. Then it's Tony Newman, Aaron McGill, David Auger, Troy Searle, and Anthony Robson. And we've had some great racing at this end of the field today.
Yes, the fellows at the back are trying just as hard. They might not have the professional resources that our two lead cars do, so let's take that into account. But you can see how tight the corner at the end of the main straight is, Mike, where they really have to go 180 degrees on that steering wheel. Good driving there by Searle to try and get through the S's.
Yes, they've been pretty close.
Oh, very close.
Skitcher. And David Organ sits in just behind them, looking for something to go wrong and pick up the pieces. And these two have at each other's throats for the last 5 or 6 laps. A little rub there.
Yes, they're getting a little impatient.
Now, August thought, well, I think I'm a bit quicker than these two. It's just the passing that worries me. So he makes a move down the outside. There's no passing room there.
He was that slow that he selected another gear at the last minute.
Tell you what, though, Aaron McGill's done a pretty good job of holding them up. Auger looks to the inside. That doesn't work. Searle gets back in line behind them. Having a terrific dose here. So McGill comes down, uses the right-hand lane. That's come from the Paul Morris textbook.
Yeah, suicide lane as well, and not paying that.
Oh, watch it. Hang on to it there. Oh, doesn't sound too good there. And he's got to make sure that he doesn't bog it down in the infield, which is still very, very wet. Well, just a moment there or so for young Searle. He gets it back under control and heads off again.
Can't just do whatever you feel like, Mike. It's a very disciplined business, professional race driving, and here's a replay showing that he was out on the left-hand side. He thought he could cut through. Look at the turn and the angle of the front wheels. He's punched it about now, and he's just lost it. This is going to be one that he can replay in his own mind, replay courtesy of Channel 7, and perhaps learn from it.
Yeah, well, Auger actually is probably thanking his lucky stars he went the other side of the racetrack.
He did well to miss him, to tell you the truth. Yes, some good driving.
It looks something like this. Whoop, catch a handful, and watch the wheel go. Where it lands, nobody knows.
They're subtle machines, and they don't respond to big handfuls of steering like that. You really can't get away with that, but here he's really stalled. This one is going to be a replay about 10 times, I'd say, Troy, just to get it well and truly in the subconscious. But
there's Peter Hills.
Mondeo coming through.
Look at the inside rear.
Yeah, locking up. That's only normal with no load on that side of the car. Finely tuned brake balance. Peter Hills now into the right-hander onto the approach to the back straight.
Gee, that was a wild entry there.
A lot of turning angle there as well.
Look at this. Jimmy getting serious again about going for the lead. A little switchback there on the inside as they come out of the corner. And I think could have been a little a glance, shall we say.
Yeah, just not enough room there. They're very tight S's, and he's running out of laps to pull this. Paul Morris knows exactly what he's up to. And as long as Paul keeps his cool and keeps his nerve, he knows that he's not going to get shunted by Jim Richards, but by the same token, if he misses a gear and lets Jim get up alongside him, the drag race could be to his disadvantage. So covering all the bases here still, Paul Morris on the approach to the back straight. Jim not still quite as close as he'd like to be, but gee, it looks close.
It certainly
but
is
he
close.
needs to be alongside him.
Paul through the sweeper, speed trap 221 kilometres an hour.
It's flying.
Now, when is defensive driving?
This is still defensive driving right up to the last lap. He's not doing anything untoward. And Jim Richards, the gentleman that he is, he's not bashing Paul Morris around. And this is the way professional drivers should drive. Maybe some other categories could learn a little, take a few tips from this style of driving. And here's Morris again through the S's. Look at that ground clearance. Really.
It's terrific, isn't it? Some fabulous race cams from our race 6 at Mallala today, now that it has finally dried.
I like the way Paul Morris goes through that corner, and he goes right up onto the curb. He really is controlling his car magnificently. But talking about controlling your car, look at Jim Richards. He really, you couldn't drop a tissue between those two cars in the middle of that corner. But Jim's still trying to set him up. He wants to go from the left to the right, but Morris is awake up to the strategy. Here we go.
Morris is quick, isn't he, off the starting line for that first right-hander and the left-hander, and from there on, Jim's car just gathers him in. Watch Jim now as they sweep through here. There's nothing available down the inside on the right, so you feint one down the outside and try and hope that he gets a bit offline and get up on the inside here.
Close, but not close enough. A lot of traffic in front. Morris will be saying, boys, do me a favor and get out of the way. I want all the room I can to make my move.
So it will be fabulous when Patrick Watts returns.
Yes, imagine a trio carrying on like this. It would be really quite difficult. But Jim not giving up at all. He's placing his Volvo as close as he dares. Just a tap of that curb, out on the curb himself down the start-finish line. So here's...
Can he do it?
The last lap. Paul Morris, enormous pressure on him. And I think he's done a superb job here to keep Jim Richards at bay today.
Well, they've got a little traffic to deal with, some cars to lap before the checker flag, and Richards tries to set up. He wasn't quick enough out of that last corner. Now, which side? You go left or right? It'll be right here, underneath Anthony Robson. As they exit out of there, Morris leaves the gap open. Richards tries to grab a couple of gears here, but you'll notice Morris will get across to the right again. He's not going to run this all the way and leave the gap open in the last half lap.
This could be it. He's close now, Mike. If he's going to dart in, he's going to do it now.
It's going to be a big move down the outside and fade it again. See if he can get him underneath. On the exit, coming up to the S's, only 2 corners to go. There's Morris into the left-hander. Now they sweep out of here into the right-hander.
Tell you what, Morris he planned that as well as acting he could as well as he could. One more stab. He wants to come through. Again on the inside. A stab. Good. Morris placed it where he couldn't utilize the traction he had.
Last corner coming up, and Paul Morris is going to pick up the double at Mallala. Across the line. Checkered flag time, and Paul Morris with the arm in the air. 2 hands in the air.
Well, he deserved that one.
Yes, he certainly did. Jimmy Richards finishing back there in second place. And then it was Matthew Coleman, the next one through, followed by Bradley Jones. Recapping the placings for you. Race number 6, Paul Morris, the winner. Jim Richards finished in second. Matt Coleman was third. Brad Jones fourth. Peter Hills finished back in fifth. Then it was Mark Atterton in 16. Cato 7th. 8th was Tony Newman. 9th was David Auger. And 10th was Jim Cornish. Don't go away. We'll be back to talk to the winners. A result, and what a race. Third place not only in this event, but he certainly was in the top 3 in the race we saw last week's program. Matthew Coleman, you're starting to climb up there in the points.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, if you're looking at going well in a championship, it certainly comes down to consistency. It's pointless winning one round and not finishing the next one. So I seem to have finished all the races at the moment, and hopefully that will get me some points, and towards the end of the season we could be looking good.
Well, you've done that at the expense of the boss. Is he leaning on you?
No, Brad's been fantastic towards me, and I think he's delighted to see me up there already.
When they tell you can run without air in the tyres, you'll know that they want something else.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're swapping cars for the next round. No.
Well done, Matthew. Jimmy Richards, I don't know what you've got to do to win a race. That's as hard as you've ever tried.
No, I mean, that's what it's all about, is having a good race, and I must admit I thoroughly enjoyed it. Second, okay, but well, you can go away with the fact that we couldn't have tried any harder, and we had a great race, and it was I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Was it a fair race?
Yeah, it was a fair race. I mean, you know, if I was in front, I would have done exactly the same thing, which is make the track as small as possible.
Well done. You're still on the top of the points table. A 10-point buffer is still not enough, is it?
Oh, well, listen, it's only the third round, and we've got another 5 to go, so... you know, anything can happen from here, so, yeah, no, we're not really worried at all.
Still a great day for Volburn for you personally.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Well done, Jimmy.
Thank you.
And the man who's got out of his uniform and he's untogged and togged up in his civvies is Paul Morris. Congratulations. A great weekend at Mallala.
It was, yeah. Got home and hosed, as you might say, so it was good. 2 wins, and to finish in front of Jim, you really know you worked hard.
Well, you worked very hard at finishing in front of Jim. Widest BMW ever built?
Well, I hope it is, and... you know, I just had to drive the race to stay in front. Jim definitely had the car speed, and I wasn't going to let him past.
You're 10 points behind. Can you make up that deficit at Winton?
It is. It hurt us. The DNF at Oran Park really knocked us round. So history shows not everyone finishes every race in the championship, so we just got to finish everyone from here.
Checking out the BOC Gases Super Touring points table after 6 races, and Volvo's Jim Richards continues to lead, but the gap back to Paul Morris has been slashed considerably. Brad Jones has vaulted back to third, 1 clear of his Audi team partner Matthew Coleman, while the AWOL Patrick Watts is now down to 5th. We move to Winton for the next round of the championship. That's Brad Jones' home territory.
You should do well. You should do better there.
The races that we've seen so far, and a new format when we go to Winton with 3 sprint races. Is that going to play more into the hands of Paul Morris and less into the hands of Jim Richards?
It's going to play into the hands of the drivers that can stay alert and realize that every start is super important. So 1 more start each day, just even the wear and tear on the clutch is going to be interesting.
Like a parliamentarian, isn't he, really? Hope you've enjoyed the program today. We look forward to your company next week, same time, same place, and we'll bring you the action from Winton Raceway.